All right. All right. But all right, we're ready to keep going here. So first of all, I want to apologize a little bit. I think I haven't been all that sensitive to students. I hope I wasn't alienating people the other day. Like I kind of called out a student because they were sitting over here, not over here, and I don't know if I embarrassed them. So I'm not trying to embarrass anybody. I just want us to all be together as a group, and so I'm hoping we'll get there. And saying that, I want to invite you to join the sociology club. I don't know if you're enjoying this class yet, but a good way to learn more about sociology, and more importantly, a good way to meet other people and get involved in some cool stuff, is to join the sociology club. And we're going to try to have our first meeting of the semester on Saturday morning. So I'll put out an announcement on Canvas with a link to my Zoom room, and so I think around 10 a.m. I'll have to confirm that, but with the people who want to be the leaders of the group. But around 10 a.m. on Saturday, I thought we could just get together. We need to talk about next week is Club Rush. That's the day when, and there's some of you have been involved with the group already, I think, and so if you want to be involved again or want to serve as an officer, we have one person that's agreed to serve as president right now. We had a previous president, they had to step down. And we have somebody who stepped up to be president, but we'll need secretary, we need vice president. And, you know, all of this is very good if you plan to transfer or you plan to work one day at a job. Getting these kinds of experiences under your belt or getting them on your resume are very helpful. But even more importantly, like I said, being connected, being engaged to your college, to your other classmates, getting to be more like an adult. In other words, in class, we kind of treat everybody like kids and we just tell you what to do. But in a club, you get to be in charge. You get to be more of an adult person in the college. And so I really encourage you to get involved in some kind of club, and especially the sociology club. So I'll send out an announcement about that. And hopefully you can come to the meeting to the Zoom meeting on Saturday. And then next week is Club Rush. That's when they'll set up tables out here and try to get people to come and, you know, learn more about the club. So the club needs to figure out if we're going to have a table, what would we have on the table to get people to come over, and who would sit there, and that kind of thing. So keep that in mind. And any questions about that, about sociology club? You don't have to be a sociology major. You don't have to like sociology even, but you have to just want to be part of a club and get to meet other people. And I'm hoping we'll do some cool stuff this semester if we've got people, because I have funds available that I've been given to spend on things, and so we can do cool stuff as a club, hopefully. Anyway, so that's that. All right, so we are still, our basic topic still is, what is sociology? And we've been answering that question for a while. We spent time the other day talking about, well, the different answers to that question. One is that it's the sociological imagination. And that's the idea that all of us are sociologists. That's what I call small s sociology. Another answer to the question, though, is that it had to do with the study of modern society. And that's where we looked at the founding fathers. So the other day we spent talking about the quote-unquote founding fathers of sociology. And we said that they looked at the modern world as being really amazing in a lot of ways. These new changes that were happening to humanity with technology and democracy and all of the things we've identified as modern. But they were worried about what was wrong with the modern world. And so we began looking the other day at why they wanted to have sociology, what was wrong with the modern world. And just briefly, what they said was, one was, according to Karl Marx, the problem with it is capitalism, a whole system where one group of people gets to get rich and the other group of people that's much bigger gets poor. And so he thought that's not a great system, and we need a different kind of structure of our society if we want to, maximize human potential, because when people are poor and struggling, they're not getting to be their best selves. So if we want to, the best humanity we can have, we don't want to have a bunch of poor people and only a few rich people. The second concern, and that was Marx, so he started something called conflict theory, and we're going to learn more about conflict theory. And it was this conflict, so when you think of Marx, you can think of conflict, but you can think of conflict between classes, class conflicts, so like rich versus poor, or capitalists versus working people. Right now, our union and the faculty union may go on strike, and so we're in a conflict with the administration who manage this institution. But then we began to talk about Durkheim, and Durkheim is the founding father of functionalism, and we boiled down his concerns to the question of lack of morality. That the problem in the modern world is that we've got a lot of people living in new circumstances called cities, and they're not really sure how to live. They don't have the things that social life gives people, which are like rules to follow, ways to behave, good goals to have. But in this modern world, we're all just kind of thrown together into big cities, and we end up not knowing how to treat each other, and we mistreat each other. And so the big challenge for the modern world is, for Marx, it's to resolve class conflict and create a more harmonious, prosperous humanity. For functionalism, it's to get people to have a new kind of morality that will allow them to live together in this modern world in a way where they're not exploiting each other and making each other poor, or committing mass shootings against each other, or harming themselves with things like drugs and other addictions and things. And the final perspective was symbolic interactionism, and we're going to learn more about each of these perspectives. That's the one, so conflict theory is Marx, that's who we learned about, he's the founding father. Functionalism was Durkheim, and he's the founding father. And then symbolic interactionism is Max Weber, and his concern, as we talked about, was rationalization, and that one's a little bit complicated. How can we put that one? Well, let's just call it the iron cage. This idea that we, in the modern world, individual people often feel trapped by big, large things that dominate us. We have big government, we have big business, we have big education, big healthcare. All these things are big, huge organizations, or big, huge things that we have to try and navigate. And we often feel like we're just little rats in these big structures, big, and in the modern world, bigger things are big. Not just cities, but these things called bureaucracies, things like the healthcare system, the education system, the government, the business world. These things are big and huge and already, and you feel as an individual person that you have very little power often. And so hopefully, the way I'm presenting these, hopefully you can see that these aren't just old dead white guys writing 100 years ago or more about what's wrong with the world, but they are thinkers that are speaking to you right now about what's going on with your world, about a capitalist world where we don't have enough housing, for example, or enough jobs for people so that they can live their best lives. I'm sure you've experienced that and see that in our world. A lot of talk about the homelessness and lack of good employment for people in America, for example. But also, if you think in terms of the whole world, whole countries and places where people don't have enough to live. If you think about immorality or people not making good choices about how to treat themselves and how to treat others, I'm sure you can think of examples of moral problems having to do with crime or drug addiction or abuse of various kinds of oneself and of others in people's lives. A lot of talk in our world today about the way we treat each other and people not knowing how to be moral people. And finally, I'm sure you have examples in your mind of ways that people feel very small and turned into numbers and dehumanized by the systems that we live under. And so maybe this is all too abstract, but hopefully as we learn about these perspectives, the value of what they're telling you might become clearer and you can make use of these ideas. But what I'm trying to push against is, this tendency we have to think something, people are talking a long time ago about something, it doesn't really pertain to me. I'm trying to present these ideas in ways that you can see it does matter. And so even if you're not a capital S sociologist, and this is more about capital S sociology, even if you're just a regular person who never majors in sociology or doesn't join the sociology club, these ideas, I think, can be useful to you and helpful for understanding what's going on in today's world, not just what was going on back then. So what were these three main perspectives in sociology? That's what we're going to spend a lot more time on over the next several weeks, because once I give you an overview of the three perspectives, then we're going to start going on a deep dive into conflict theory. And we'll spend a couple weeks on conflict theory or more. And then we're going to, then you'll take a test. And after that, you're going to go into functionalism and symbolic interactionism for several weeks. So I'm right now just kind of trying to give you an overview to kind of orient you. So there's this world of sociology, and it isn't one thing. It's at least three things, three different perspectives. And so I call this portion of the lecture the three main perspectives, or the three main sociological perspectives. What is a perspective? Well, it's a way of seeing. And so another term I might use is approaches, or I like the term lenses. If we think of conflict theory and functionalism and symbolic interactionism as lenses or filters, when we put one on, the world looks different. If we're looking at the world through the conflict theory lens, it's going to look a lot different than if we're looking at the world through the functionalist lens. And so my goal right now is to give you an overview of these different lenses, sort of like if you were going to a sunglasses shop and trying to decide what kind of sunglasses do I want? Do I want the yellow kind? Do I want the pink kind? Do I want the dark kind? I mean, what kind of filters do I want to look at the world? What gives me the best clarity on trying to understand the world? And again, I want to make a table. We made a table to compare the founding fathers, and I'm going to make a table with you to compare these three perspectives. So the three perspectives, as you know, are conflict theory, functionalism, and symbolic interactionism. A lot of words in sociology. I was telling some students earlier, if English isn't your first language, it's hard to learn sociology in English because there's a lot of words we got to use. But even if you speak English, they're hard to learn all these words. What can we compare them on? By the way, another thing I want to mention is Canvas. If you haven't been logging into Canvas, even though you're in a live synchronous class, I really want to encourage you to regularly log into Canvas, or at least regularly read your Yuba College email. If I'm not mistaken, when I post announcements on Canvas, those should come to you as emails. Do they? Because I had a strange email from somebody saying, where can I get the videos for the lectures? And I had just made an announcement about that. So I'm like, didn't you get the email about that? But that was one of the announcements, was I'm putting all these lectures I'm recording right there on Canvas. And so you can watch them if you miss class, or if you just want to rewatch them. And Canvas is also where I have the lecture notes. So the lecture notes, if you're having trouble finding those, let me know. I can point you in the right direction. But this table that I'm constructing here, it's all there in the lecture notes, and you would be better off having already printed it out and brought it with you right now, so that as I'm lecturing, you don't have to struggle with my handwriting and things like that. It's all right there. So please, look into Canvas and the announcements and the lecture notes at a minimum. But there's other things there. If you go to modules, for example, you'll see that there's a lot of stuff there that can help you understand this class. So this table that's there in the lecture notes, it says one of the things we can compare them on is who are their founders of each of these perspectives, and who are the contributors. Because as I mentioned before, the founding fathers were all white men, upper middle class white men, but that doesn't mean those were the only people that helped create sociology. There were other humans alive at the time, and they were analyzing the modern world too. And so you already know the founders. The founders are Marx, Durkheim, and Weber. And by founders, I still would put that in quotes, because they're not the only founders, but we call them the founders. But who else contributed to the founding of sociology? And here's where I'm going to reference our textbook. We do have a textbook for this class, and I've told you already that I don't test you on things that are in the textbook that I haven't covered. So you're okay kind of ignoring the textbook to a certain extent if all you care about is doing well in the class. You don't necessarily have to be reading the textbook. But if you were to take a look at chapter 1, if you do plan to major in sociology, I definitely encourage you to be looking at the textbook because there's a lot more in there than I can cover. But one of the things that's in there are pictures of the founders of sociology and discussions of people who helped create sociology. And so they don't only mention Marx, Weber, and Durkheim, and they mention some people I'm not going to mention, but one of the persons, or some of the persons they mention, are W.E.B. Du Bois. So this goes under contributors to conflict theory, other people besides Marx. One of them was W.E.B. Du Bois. And the other one your textbook talks about, and I'll briefly talk about, is, why am I blanking on her name? Somebody have the notes? I'm blanking on her name. This is what happens when you get old. It'll come to me. We'll start with W.E.B. Du Bois. So Marx, as we talked about, said that there's class conflict. And for him, that's the main story. If you're trying to understand what's going on in our world today, you need to look at the classes. And you need to understand this at a global level. So according to Marx, when we see, for example, like supposedly Russia and the United States, or the Russia and Ukraine at war with each other, if you're a real conflict theorist, you'd say, is that the real conflict going on? Is it between countries? No. A conflict theorist would say that's a fake battle. What's really going on? You have rich people that sell weapons, for example, that make a lot of money selling weapons to countries. And so those rich people that sell weapons to countries, they want countries to go to war with each other. And so what's really happening is working people in Russia are being made to go kill working people in Ukraine, and you've got working people killing working people. Who benefits from that? Rich people who don't work, who make money selling weapons. So if you're a conflict theorist, you'd say there isn't really beef between Ukrainian people and Russian people. They don't hate each other. They're just people with families trying to live. But who says they have to be at war? Well, rich oligarchs like Putin and other rich guys that make money selling weapons. And so the real conflict is between rich people who want war and working people who don't. And so conflict theorists say, you have to, question these ideologies that say, we are American, we've got to fight the Germans or the Mexicans or the El Salvadorans or the Iranians or whoever they are. A conflict theorist would say, no, you're a working person. You need to go join with other working people in Iran and in Pakistan and Russia and try to make the world better for working people, not this nationalist stuff. And so he was convinced, Marx, that class was what matters. And he even asked this question, does race matter? Like, should black people be fighting white people for their freedom, for their liberation? And Marx said, well, not really, because the real allies of black people are other poor white people. Poor black people and poor white people and poor Mexican people need to come together to fight the wealthy, not, come together, white people come together to fight black people, or black people come together to fight white people. You're being, again, misled by rich people. So for example, if a rich guy like Trump says, you're white and all the white people come together around me, well, you're being misled, because really, if you're a conflict theorist, you'd see those white Trumpers would be better off joining together with, other, angry black people to make America great again, rather than joining together with some rich white guy who's not really gonna make America great for poor white people. So Marx was convinced class is what matters. And if you're trying to figure out who are my brothers, who are my allies in the world, who should I be fighting with, what cause should I join, you shouldn't be joining with nationalism like America First, or joining with races, race groups, or even religious groups. You should be joining with, your working brothers and sisters. Well, W.E.B. Du Bois was a black man. You may have heard of W.E.B. Du Bois. He's a very famous American person who helped to found, he was the first black person to graduate with a PhD from Harvard. He helped to start the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. He became a great sociologist. He's known for his research. He's known for his activism, for building organizations. He's a very important figure in American history, and so you probably learned about him in your history classes in high school. I'm sure they mentioned him. It's Black History Month right now, and W.E.B. Du Bois is somebody lots of people bring up as being one of the great figures. Another guy you probably heard of too is Booker T. Washington, and Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois had some debates about what was the right way for black people to advance in America. Booker T was much more on the side of business. If you just start your own businesses and get rich, that's how you'll advance. And W. Du Bois was more on the side of sociology and saying, well, no, we have to, have political power and social power, and it isn't just money isn't going to be the only thing. And we're not going to be able to make money until we have political power. So they had this kind of fight about that. But Du Bois is also arguing with Marx. So Marx said race doesn't really matter. What really matters is class and class conflict. And Du Bois said, well, no, race conflict is its own thing. For example, Du Bois said, I understand what Marx is saying, that capitalism is the cause of a lot of people's poverty, and it isn't just white people that are capitalists. There is this capitalist class that dominates. And so like working black people may have to fight against rich black people to really achieve liberation. He understands all that, but he says, but the way things are right now, and he was writing in America in the early part of the 20th century, the way things right now is black people can't join white working people for liberation. For example, if joining a union would be one of the things Marx would say. If you want to fight with your working class brothers and sisters for better treatment, a union would be a great thing to be part of, because unions are the ways that working class people can get some power and better treatment from bosses and owners. But Du Bois points out that a lot of the unions at the time, working unions, wouldn't let black people in. So you're telling black people, just forget about your race and go join your class brothers and sisters and fight to overthrow capitalism. But meanwhile, we can't even join the unions that the white people control. So we're definitely facing race as an issue in itself, aside from the class question. And so Du Bois basically said, we as black people need to come together as black people, fighting for better treatment of black people in places like America. And then once we have more respect and more rights and more better treatment under the political system, then we can start doing things like joining unions and doing the things that advance the whole working class. But right now we have no choice but to fight together as black people. So he was arguing with Marx and saying class conflict, or that race conflict, is actually this key, the center of action when we're looking at the modern world, and class comes second. Marx also asked the question about women, because women in his day were certainly oppressed. If you were a woman in capitalism, Marx said you're not even a low-paid worker as a woman in capitalism, you're a slave. Because most women, their job is to take care of the men and the children at home. So the man gets paid by the company, and then he takes that money, it's his money, and he can spend it on alcohol or whatever, gambling. And then she has to wait for him to come home and give her whatever for food. But she's like making him a good worker, like her job to keep him clean, keep him happy, keep him satisfied. That makes him a good worker for the company. So she's actually working for the company. She's making the company, helping the company make money. The company doesn't pay her anything, just pays the man the money. And so Marx said, that is double, like women are even treated even worse under capitalism, working class women, than working class men. So should women fight, should women come together as women and fight men and their control of women? And Marx said, no, again, it's kind of like the race question is what he called it. It's the women question. Women need to come together with working people and fight for better treatment of working people. When we overthrow capitalism and have a new kind of system where all working people get paid what they're worth, then women will definitely have rights and money and all that stuff and independence. But right now, they can't just do that as women. They have to fight together with men. Well, Harriet Martineau, that's the name, thank you. I finally figured it out. Harriet Martineau was another thinker at the time writing. And she disagreed with this Marxist view and said, no, women, again, are mistreated by men as women, not as working class people under capitalism, but just in a sexist patriarchal system where men treat women in a lot of ways like crap. And so women, if they're going to come out of that, they have to come together as women and demand equality of respect, not just equality of pay or equality of rights. And remember, in these days, back in these days, a lot of women couldn't vote. In America, women could only vote in the 1920s. So when Martineau was writing, you didn't have the right to vote. You barely had the right to write something like she was writing. Women were expected to stay home and shut up. But she was writing stuff and saying stuff, and people are telling her to shut up, but she's saying, you know, women need to speak out as women and try to get other women on board with the cause of freeing women from the control of men. Because even if we overthrow capitalism, there's still going to be men that think it's our job to please them or be available to them physically and all that stuff. And, you know, that's not equality. So they said we need women's equality with men first, not after we get rid of capitalism, but before we get rid of capitalism. And that's what Du Bois was saying as well. We need racial equality first, not after the classes, after the working class overthrows the upper class. So they were adding the idea that there's other kinds of conflict. And that's why we've come to call it kind of conflict theory, because it looks at a variety of different kinds of conflicts that exist in the modern world. The class conflict, the gender conflict, the race conflict. And when I say that, you know, gender, race, and class are the big three in sociology, well, it's been conflict theory that's insisted that we keep these categories in mind and try to understand how people's experiences are shaped by their race, class, and gender. I would say nowadays, though, we're finally starting to see that race, class, and gender aren't separate things. They're linked. They're intersectional is the term people use nowadays. And by the way, this play that I'm hoping to put on at the end of the semester and that I'm going to ask you guys to be part of, it deals with this exact question. Like, can Mexican women free themselves just as Mexican women? Or do they need to join together with their class group, with other ethnic groups, and with men for better treatment? Anyway, so intersectionality, but so race, class, and gender, and Marx, Du Bois, and Martineau are the three main founders, I would say, of conflict theory. Durkheim's the main founder of functionalism, but who else is a contributor to that perspective? Your textbook mentions Merton, and we're going to have a lot to say more about Robert Merton. So again, I'm just writing it bigger over here. Merton's an American sociologist, again, somebody writing more around the time that Mills wrote. So again, these founding fathers were back in the 19th century, the 1800s mostly. But once we get to the 20th century, the 1900s, people like Merton were writing. And Merton, as we'll see, I like to present him as somebody that makes functionalism a little more mature or sophisticated, because functionalism is a little bit simplistic, as we'll see. But you can make it a more sophisticated or mature perspective if you try, and Merton was the one who helped us do that. How do I want to put it now? Well, I'll just sort of leave it there, that he helped make it a more sophisticated perspective and made it more, maybe more American, because Durkheim was very focused on Europe, and but trying to understand American society kind of makes you raise new questions about this question of functionalism. And we'll see how he did that. your textbook mentions George Herbert Mead as somebody who contributed to symbolic interactionism. Symbolic interactionism, a key idea of it, as we're going to see, is that how we are or who we are, we can't really. I asked you, who are you sociologically, right, on the first day of class. And one of the key ideas of symbolic interactionism is we don't really have a self except through interacting with other people. And some of you said, well, I'm like really shy when I'm, with other people, but when I'm with my friends, I'm shy when I'm with strangers, but when I'm with my friends, I'm really talkative. And if you said something like that, like it depends on the social environment, who I'm interacting with. And you could say, well, what kind of person is Mark Flax? Well, when I'm with my kids, I'm one kind of person. When I'm with my wife, I'm another. When I'm with my students, I'm another. When I'm with my boss, I'm another. I mean, we don't necessarily have a single self that we are. Who are you? Well, it depends when you're talking about. Where am I and who am I with? And that'll give you a more specific answer. And that's what Mead tried to show, is that there's a difference really between the I, when you say I am somebody, and when you say me. There's a difference between I and me. I mean, what's he talking about there? Well, there's this self that you have that nobody else knows about, that's your own internal self. But then there's the self that you present to the world. And so at that level, you can at least say that there's kind of two people that you are, your interior self and your exterior one. And in fact, some of you said in your, well, at least online, when people talked about commenting on other people's who are you sociologically, and try to figure out how did you answer the question versus how did I answer it. Some people more focused on their internal self, who am I internally? And other people focus more, how do others see me? How am I seen by others? And both of those go together. I mean, again, they're not totally separate, because how you see yourself can be affected by how you think other people see you. Like I had one student online saying, I'm a gigantic nerd. He said it 3 times. I'm like, well, why would you call yourself a gigantic nerd? I mean, is that something you're proud to say you are? And he would say, but I don't care what anyone thinks of me. And I'm just kind of noticing it's kind of like a contradiction in a way. I mean, he's calling himself a word that's considered negative, nerd, I think. But he's proudly owning it, saying that's who I am. But he's almost saying this is how others see me. Others see me as a nerd. But internally, I might have a lot more of who I am than what people see. So I'm just trying to show you how we see ourselves is affected by how we think other people see us. And that's this kind of social self. We don't have a self separate from society, is what sociologists say. Psychologists see it differently sometimes. So this is why I sometimes argue with students who say, I'm an introvert, or I don't argue with them, but I say, well, introvert's a psychological term. And in psychology, they see ourselves as kind of shaped by genes and things like that. So you just have a self, and that's just who you are. And sociology is much more on the side of saying, well, it's not clear who your self is until you've interacted with others. And as we change our interactions over time, and as we grow in different social situations, our self changes. So we don't necessarily have a single self that's always the same. All right, well, so those are some contributors to the other people, and so hopefully that helps kind of, in your mind, slot the things in chapter 1 into slots that make sense. So they're all just founders of these different perspectives. There's only 3 perspectives, but there's a lot of different sociologists, but you can simplify things by saying, well, what kind of sociologists are they? Well, how do you know what kind of sociologists are they? In other words, I'm just putting them in their slot and telling you they are, but what really distinguishes them in terms of how they look at things? And so I would call it, so this I call the society metaphor. You know what a metaphor is? I'll write that over here again. So when we're trying to figure out what kind of sociologist somebody is, a good way to approach that is to ask, well, how do they see society? What your picture in your mind of what a society is kind of helps determine what kind of sociologist you are. And so, so I'm writing society metaphor here. A metaphor is when you compare something to something else. And it helps you to kind of conceptualize something, to say, like if you say, well, what does that taste like? And you say, well, it tastes like chicken or something like that. You're helping somebody understand something by comparing it to something else. And so like society, when you try to figure out, society is kind of a complicated topic. Like if I asked my son says, Dad, what are you? What's your job? And I say, I'm a sociologist. They go, what's that? My two sons. And they go, well, sociologists, we study society. Oh, what's a society? If you're trying to explain to an 8-year-old what a society is, it might help to use a metaphor, like compare it to something else. What would you compare if you had to explain to my 8-year-old, what is American society? When you're talking about American society, what are you talking about? What is it? Could you compare it to something else? To help a kid understand what it is his daddy studies? I mean, is it like a desk? Is society like a desk? That doesn't work for me. Is it like a tree? Maybe, I don't know. Trees have roots and branches. I don't know. Is it like an anthill? Is it like a beehive? Is it like a car? Is it like a football game? Super Bowl's coming up on Sunday. Anybody watch football? I don't know if I'm being toxic masculine to keep bringing up football metaphors, but we seem to have some females that like football. Anyway, is society like a football game? Kind of? Certainly for conflict theory, we could compare society to being like a football game. Functionalism is kind of what I would call the dominant perspective in sociology. Like if you took social studies in high school or junior high, they probably mostly gave you the functionalist perspective. Conflict theory, like I said, Marx is a bad guy in American history. Some places don't allow you to teach Marx. So you probably didn't learn a lot of Karl Marx in high school. And some of this symbolic interactionist stuff is kind of out there. So you probably didn't learn about those ideas that much. But I'm sure you learned the basics of sociology from a functionalist standpoint. And again, if you were to ask a cop, what's a society like? Your job is to protect society. What is society that you're protecting? If you ask a nurse, your job is to make sure people aren't getting sick in society. What's society and how does that affect your work as a nurse? Society is this thing we live in, but what is it? I like to start with the functionalist perspective because they tend to say that society is like a machine or organism. And like I said, conflict theory sees it more like a football game. Well, these are just metaphors, they're not literal. But what's the difference between saying society is like a machine or organism and saying it's more like a football game? Like, what's the disagreement there that conflict theorists and functionalists are having? If that's their metaphor. Like you said, it was like a football game. Why do you think it's like a football game and not like a machine? Like what happens in a football game that doesn't happen in a machine? In a machine, do you have different teams in the machine that are fighting against each other? A machine's all one thing, right? Where all the parts of the machine are all working together to make the machine run. But in a football game, you have the 49ers on one side and the Chiefs on the other, and are they working together so everybody has a good time? No, we're trying to drive the other one into the dust so that we are the victors and they are the losers. And in football, every gain of one team is a loss for the other team, right? So you're trying to gain yardage and the other team loses yardage when you're doing that. So these are very different metaphors. To say that society is like a football game is to say there's different teams. And that's what we were talking about. For Marx, the teams were classes. There's the upper class, the middle class, the working class, and they're fighting each other. And if you want to understand what's going on, you need to look at the fight and how people are doing it and who's doing what to whom and why. And who's winning and who's losing. The other conflict theorist said there's other teams that are more important to look at. Maybe it's the races. There's white people, there's black people, there's brown people, there's Asian people, and they're all fighting for dominance. That's a class, that's a race-based kind of conflict, and that isn't quite what Du Bois said, but that's another way of looking at the world. I think that's how Trump looks at the world. I don't look at the world as a big war of the different races, but some people do. And some people see it as a war of the sexes, that the males and females are fighting each other. But whichever teams you think are the important teams to look at, conflict theorists are emphasizing the conflict between them. Whereas a machine or organism, what do machines and organisms have in common? And I'm going to focus on organisms. Organisms and machines are similar. You could say that an organism is a biological machine, like the human body is an organism. It's a lot like a machine, isn't it? And in what way is a human body like a machine? Like, is there any similarity between our human body, say, and your refrigerator or your car? How about your car? My office is over. It's interesting. My sociology office is right in next to the auto. And I always see the students that are trying to put cars back together. And they kind of remind me of sociology students trying to figure out how we can get society to work better. Any similarity you see between a car and a society? Like what? Give me one similarity. I was telling my daughter the other day, students, they just will not speak when I ask. That's a big difference. Studying society sociologically, what has changed? In the old days when I was a professor, I would engage students in conversation and they wanted to talk and raise their hand and had ideas. Now people just sit there and I don't know what the reason is. She said, my daughter, she said, well, they just don't want to speak because they're worried they'll get judged or looked down upon or made fun of, and so why would they speak? And I'm like, yeah, maybe there's no upside to speaking out. Maybe there's only downside. Well, how about I'll give you $5? No, I don't know. I don't know what I'll give you. I'll give you a good grade if you engage the class, and a bad grade if you don't. But what I'm talking about is machines, like machines and organisms have parts. So a car has an engine, it has an exhaust system. They're made up of systems, and the different systems work together. What are the systems of the human body? Do we have any nurses in here? We have like a circulatory system, a nervous system, a digestive system. These different systems all work together to make the whole thing work. And each system has a kind of function associated with it. So I'm comparing organisms to societies here. They're both made up of parts, but what do we call the parts that make up an organism? I call them systems, but what are the specific parts? The systems are kind of abstract, but you have some major parts of your body that if you didn't have those parts, you wouldn't be able to live, right? What parts are important? Your fingernail? What's an important part of the body? The heart. And what's a name for the heart? And is that, no, I'll give you another one, the brain. Are there something similar that we call hearts and brains? What's the term for that? Yay, organs, yay, okay. Organs. So organism is made up of organs. And trying to study organisms means trying to look at how these organs work together in systems. Societies are made up of parts too. I don't expect you to know the name for those because you're not a sociologist and functionalist yet. But the term we would give as functionalists is institutions. Society is made up of institutions. And if you're going to carry this metaphor further, for each organ that a body has, a human body, there's an equivalent one that our social system has. So if you said the heart, what's the function of the heart?
Pump blood.
Pump blood? And why do we need blood?
Need blood to go to our organs.
And what does blood do for the other organs?
Carries oxygen.
Carries oxygen and nutrients. Do we have anything in our society that's sort of responsible for carrying, well, for sort of keeping the system pumping? I don't know. Maybe I picked a bad one. It's a little complicated, but I would say, I mean, if you're going to compare it to blood, I would say our communication system. So all of our internet and phones and highway system, all the things that allow things to circulate. So we have circulate our cars around, and trains and buses and planes. We circulate information through things like our internet and our phone system and our telephone lines. And so you could say the communication system of our society, but it's a little complicated because the nervous system. I'd rather start with the brain, actually, because that will make things clearer. The brain, some would say, is the most important organ of a system, of a human system. Is there an equivalent institution that you can think of? Like, what does the brain's function? What does the brain do?
Don't you think?
Yeah, what does that mean? Well, what's its function? If your brain wasn't working, what else wouldn't happen?
Source memory. You're gonna be breathing.
So your brain helps tell your body what to do. It coordinates the different functions. So you need blood circulating, your brain tells your heart to pump. You need oxygen to get your heart working, while your brain tells your lungs to expand, or tells your diaphragm to activate. Anyway, so the brain is the coordinator. It coordinates all the other functions. It keeps all the other things working. Is there in a society institution whose job it is to make sure all the other systems are doing their job? Like, maybe it's simpler if you just think of Yuba College as the society. Is there somebody whose job it is to make sure I'm doing my job? Who's that? The president. They have president and vice president. And what are they called? They're called the government, the administration. So we can say the government is like a social institution whose function is very similar to the brain's function in a human body. We say the brain has the executive function, and what do we call the leader of the government? The executive, the chief executive. And so it's a very similar kind of thing. If you were going to compare, what about what's the immune system's job? Why do we have white blood cells and stuff like that? What's the job of the immune system of the human body? Maybe we didn't take biology. Immune system, if you don't have a good immune system, what happens? Huh? Get sick, yeah, you catch diseases like COVID and cancer and things like that. So the immune system fights off threats. Do we have an institution in society whose job is to make sure that outside threats don't come in and kill us? What do we call that? The military, law enforcement. These aren't hard. I'm getting a little irritated because, again, if you were taught social studies in high school, elementary school, you did learn the functionalist perspective. And I'm sure you went over this, that you can compare a society to being like a machine where we have these parts of society and they all work together. And again, if you were teaching sociology to a kid, like my 10-year-old or my 8-year-old, you'd probably want to focus on how everybody's working together. Society is one big thing. It's one big machine, and we're all working together, and different people have different roles or different jobs to do in the big system. So we have like police officers and soldiers, and their job, military and law enforcement, is to fight off threats. It's like the immune system. Your body also has a reproductive system, a system of, I won't get into the graphic details, but you understand how new babies are formed. And so what is the role, what is the function of the reproductive system? And do we have a similar system in society for reproducing society? But why do we have penis and vagina and uterus?
To make more babies.
To make more babies, because when you die, they'll be, that way your genes can go on. Do we have any way of making sure things go on after the people who, like, if the president dies, how does the government keep going? I mean, how do we reproduce things in America? How do we keep America going? Which institutions are responsible for that? A lot of you don't have one yet.
Schools.
Schools are part of it. Families is the main thing. So like a reproductive system to make sure that you have a new human body. We rely in America on families and schools, I would say. But we mostly expect families to have new Americans, go and reproduce them. but not just biologically give birth to them, but do what we call socialize. So the function is to socialize them, to make them good members of society. I mean, the reproductive system just births them, but we could say the social reproductive system, the family, yes, it just births them, but then it also must train them. It must teach them morals and values and norms and cultures and all the things that we expect individuals to know to function in society. Of course, we just expect families to do it up till about like age 5, and you teach the basic things like, don't put your finger in your nose and stuff like that. Don't pull your pants down. But then we send them to schools, and schools teach other things they need to know to function in society, so that when the president dies, we have other people that know how to do it because they've gone to school and they've learned the things that society needs to teach people so that they can carry on society. And so we're saying, any other systems we'd want to mention? I would say the digestive system is another important one. The digestive system takes raw materials from the environment and breaks them down into nutrients. So you chew things and then you swallow them, and your stomach breaks them down, your large intestine, your small intestine breaks them down, and all of that turns into nutrients that your body then uses to fuel the other systems. Do we have any system in our society of taking in raw materials and turning them into the fuel that runs our society? What do we call that? Like literally, like we cut down trees, turn them into lumber, sell the lumber. We take oil out of the ground, turn it into gasoline, sell the gasoline. What do we call that system for doing those things in America? That's our health system? Is that our military system? What is the system that makes money, where money is made? What do we call that? I referred to it as capitalism earlier. Capitalism would be what kind of system for America? It's our health system, it's our culture. History system?
No, industry.
Industry is one word for it. Economics is what I'm getting at, the economic system. But yeah, industry. But when we talk about the economy of a society, you're really talking about its digestive system. How does it get the things it needs to survive? How does it get money? But in a way, it's a lot like a digestive system. It's taking raw materials, breaking them down and turning them into products, and then selling the products and turning them into money. Anyway, so maybe you're not participating because this is so basic and easy for you that you can't believe I'm asking such simple questions. Maybe that's it, I don't know. But hopefully it is clear to you that when we're thinking of America, we can not just think of it as one thing, but think of it as composed of different parts. And try to think of how do these parts work together to create some overall whole. And certainly America has conflict in it, as conflict theorists would say, but a functionalist would say, but there's still some overall thing there that all Americans are trying to be part of. And so as sociologists, what we're trying to study is those systems. And if we're trying to figure out what's wrong with the society, conflict theorists tend to see revolution as the only solution. So like there's conflict in society, and the only way to resolve the conflict is have one side beat out the other and create a whole new society. That's pretty drastic. But a functionalist is more like a mechanic, more like an auto mechanic. If your car is not working, does the mechanic just say, well, gotta buy a new one? The only solution is buy a new one. No, a good mechanic would say, well, let's pick up the hood and see what's going on under there. Maybe it isn't the whole car that's broken. Maybe there's just one system that's not doing well. Like if America's not functioning right now very well, we could ask, well, is it all of America that's breaking down or isn't working? Or are there particular systems that aren't functioning too well? My daughter said last night, Dad, I just think the education system's broken and we need a new approach. I might agree. I mean, certainly weird to have a whole college here and very few people actually coming to live classes and stuff, and everyone staying home and stuff. So I don't know what we're doing with our education system right now, but certainly you could certainly that's a functionalist way of looking at things, is that instead of just saying everything sucks and we need a whole new thing, try to figure out what is broken and twist the knob here or change out a part there. And then you can get that car working again and functioning again. You don't need to overthrow it or revolutionize it. So functionalists tend to be much more limited in their concerns about what needs to be fixed about society. And you can kind of think of functionalism and symbolic interaction and conflict theory as two opposite ways of looking at society. Both perspectives see society as a system. Conflict theory sees society as a capitalist system that's dominated by some groups where other groups are dominated by them. Whereas functionalists see it as a system where we're all working together, hopefully harmoniously, to make it work. And which perspective is right? Well, I would say it kind of depends on where you stand. You could ask the same question about this school or this class. Is this one place where we're all trying to work together to make something happen? From my perspective, it is. I'm the professor, and I want us all to learn sociology, and I want us all to get A's. And I'm trying to get you all to work with me to engage the class and me lecture to you so that we can have one functioning whole where everybody's on the same page and everyone's working together and we're all harmonious. But from your perspective, maybe it isn't like that. From your perspective, maybe there's this dude up here that keeps talking at me and is holding me responsible for all this stuff he's saying, and he's going to grade me down if I don't learn it all. And so it's like a conflict. Like he's trying to give me an F, I'm trying to get an A. He's trying to make me learn stuff and work hard. I'm trying to get out of here without, going insane or getting too tired or getting too overwhelmed. And so are we in conflict with each other? If you have no power in a situation, it feels like conflict. It feels like these people with power are forcing me to do shit. And I'm trying to not do it. And if you're the one in power, you're like, come on, we're all on the same page. Let's all work together here. I mean, it's similar to families. This is often the case as parents. As the parents are like, we're all one family, we're all working together. Hey, Team Flax, let's sit down and have a team family meeting about how let's all work together. And my kids are like, yeah, let's have a meeting. You know what I'm saying? I mean, the kids don't have power. It's not in their interest to all be getting along. They kind of like it when there's conflict and then I'm not in charge anymore. You know what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is if you are in charge of a society or you have power in it, then functionalism is going to be a perspective that makes sense to you. Like if you're the teacher of a classroom, trying to get everyone to function together makes sense. If you're the president of the United States, you want everybody to be on the same page working together. On the other hand, if you're a Republican candidate trying to unseat that president, you like the conflict and you're creating conflict and you're saying, no, you're dumb, you're bad. So, see what I'm saying? Whether you see a social group as a harmonious thing that's working together or a conflicted thing where people are fighting each other, it can be both, but how you see it and what you emphasize, what you see when you put on your lens. When you put on your functionalist lens, you see this group of people that's all trying to work together or should be trying to work together to make their lives better. That's what a society is. If you have a conflict theory lens on there, you're like, well, that's what the people in power want, but the way they're trying to do it is not working for me, so, it's conflict, and we need a different kind of society for me to be happy. See what I'm saying? So functionalism is a little more the perspective of the dominant groups in a society. If you're in the dominant position, you're wanting everyone to get along and work together. If you're in the subordinated position and you're not in power, you're kind of like it's not working for you to have everybody work together, so you want to, throw a wrench into the functioning of the system and get it to maybe stop. People who want to challenge the powerful, sometimes they do things like have picket lines to stop people from coming to that business, or they block the roads and say, we're not going to let the cars circulate and we're not going to let the society run. And they're doing it to say, we want to stop the smooth functioning of society so that people will change the thing we're trying to change. But if you're not trying to change things, if you're just trying to get everybody to go to work, make money, just stay quiet, just do what you're told, then functionalism is what you're after. And sometimes they can change. Like when I was a student, I'm sure I was a conflict theorist, but then I became professor and I'm like, no, we need to all be on the same page, be functionalists. So it's like, depends where you stand in the system. What about symbolic interactionists though? Where do they stand and how are they looking at things and what metaphor would they give? Like I said, they're kind of out there, they're on a different page than these two. These guys are sort of on the same page, but looking at it, one's looking from below, up at the power and trying to change it. One's in the power looking at the people below and trying to get them to just get with the program. But what about symbolic interactions? Where do they stand? Well, they see social life as a play, a drama, a dramatic play, or what I would say a performance. So symbolic interactions are a little bit different in that they start kind of with the individual person and what it feels like to be a member of society, rather than trying to look at the whole society and come up with some metaphor about what it's like. They're more looking at it from the perspective of if you're a person trying to be in society, what's it like for you? What's that experience like? And they say it's accurate to say that people aren't necessarily being real when it comes to social life, that there's a lot of performance involved. Are you being real right now? No, I don't think so. I think you're performing right now. You're pretending. Pretending to be students in a classroom learning sociology. And I'm pretending to be a professor teaching you some sociology. Why do I say pretending? Because that's not the total truth of what's actually happening here. You have a lot more to you than being a sociology student. You are, a lot of other things. You may be a son or a daughter, you may be a girlfriend or a boyfriend, you may be a husband or wife, you may be a mom or dad. All of those things are true about you right now, but you're not putting them out there right now here. You pretend like you're listening. And if I make a little joke, you might go, ha ha ha, even though it wasn't funny. Have you ever pretended to laugh at something that wasn't funny? Have you ever pretended to not see something that you actually saw? If you guys were a cafe right now, all eating your lunch, and I was a young professional walking with my bag past the cafe, and I'm looking very confident, and I can do that. Well, imagine you were me just now, and you fell down in front of a cafe full of people. What do you think the first thing you would do? I suspect the first thing you would do is look up and see, what do people do? And if you were looking at that person who just fell and you were about to start laughing because it was really goofy what they did, and they looked up at you, what's the first thing you're going to do? I don't think you're going to laugh at them and go, ha, you fell. The first thing you might do is this. They looked up at me, and I went like that. I had an itchy eye. Why'd you do that? Because if you actually saw them, if you admit that you actually saw them, then they're going to do what? Then they have to look all embarrassed. Like, oh man, oh, it's such a hard day. I hate Mondays and stuff like that. But if I look up and nobody's looking at me, everyone's doing this, what can I do then? I can quickly dust off and keep walking, and it didn't happen, right? You didn't see it. I didn't fall. It didn't happen. I'm giving you, I think, a common experience. Not falling necessarily, but people pretending like something didn't happen. Why? Because the energy involved in acknowledging that it did happen would be a lot harder than just pretending like it didn't. If we did see it, then I have to look all embarrassed and I have to go, oh, it was a bad day. And you have to look all concerned. Oh, are you okay? Did you fall? Can I help you with your books? And that's a lot more energy than just going, no, I didn't see it. You're like trying to not laugh. We're always talking about people trying to not laugh. Why are you trying to not laugh? Because you care so much about that person's feelings? Or because you care about your own energy and it would be a lot easier to not deal with that than to deal with it. And so that's just one example. Or when somebody asks you, hey, how are you doing? Do you really tell them the honest answer to that question? Or do you say, I'm fine, how are you doing? Or you say, same old, or something like that. You have some response that you give. And it's kind of like being an actor. When you're in a play, you don't get to decide what you say. The lines tell you. So somebody says, hey, how are you doing? You say, I am fine. It's a script. But in real life, we're often following scripts like that. in that we don't really say how we're really feeling when somebody asks how we feel. We just, there's a lot of things that we do that are just pretend things to keep society going. The idea here is what matters is interaction. And if you're sitting at a cafe, you're just having a quiet interaction with your friends. And if I'm walking along, I'm not interacting with anyone. I'm just trying to walk to my next thing. But if I fall and you saw me, now we have this whole new interaction where you have to be the concerned person and I have to be the embarrassed person. And so we don't want to have that play, that interaction, that script. So we pretend it didn't happen and we go along with the script we already have, where I'm a confident person and I don't fall and I didn't fall. And you're just a person in a cafe and you're talking to your friend and you don't care what other people did. So it's, what I'm saying is there's a lot of pretend going on. Even if you did see the person and then you get up and say, hey, can I help you? Even that's pretend. I mean, a lot of us are like, yeah, damn, I don't want to get up and help this person, but there's other people watching and I want to look like I'm a concerned person, so I have to act like a concerned person. And a lot of the things we do are what nowadays people call performative, looking like we feel or think a certain way, even though in our heart of hearts we might not. And so, so this way that social life is like fiction, a lot of it, where we're pretending for each other, putting on acts for each other. I mean, everything we do, from the clothes we choose to put on in the morning, the things we choose to say or not say on social media, the things we choose to say or not say in class, all of it is a lot like performance in the sense of I'm trying to present myself in a certain way. I want people to think certain things about me. When a lot of you say you're introverts nowadays, I think it's partly that these kinds of interactions have become so kind of difficult to navigate in a lot of ways because of things like race, class, and gender and other concerns people have. It's like so much easier to just not interact and just stay home. But it is a lot like drama, and it's a lot like plays. And I even had this theory because I like doing plays, and we're doing one at the end of the term. And I asked myself, like, what makes a good actor or not a good actor? Like, there's some people that can get up on stage and play another part, and they're really good at it, and everyone's like, wow, they're a good actor. And there's other people that get up and try to do it, oh, get this person out of the play, they're terrible. And then at the same time, I noticed there's certain people in real life that are really good at playing a certain part. I don't know what I'm trying to say, other than what I'm getting at is, what I notice about actors, people who are good at acting, they might not be that good at, like, I'm not very good at playing the part of a professor. There is a part of a professor that you can play. And like, if I was really, really stereotypical about it, like wearing a tweed jacket with the little pads on the thing and glasses and a pipe, and speaking in a very pompous way and stuff like that. I don't know how to pretend to be a professor because it's my real job. It's who I really am. And all I know how to do is be real. And yet, if you put me on a stage and say, play the part of this doctor, I think I could do a good job. I think I'm a good actor. I'll say that. I'll brag. And because people have told me, you're really good at acting. And I go, okay. Because I'm good at, if it's known that I'm pretending, and everyone knows I'm pretending, I'm happy to pretend to be something else. But when I'm in real life, it's hard for me to pretend I'm something that I'm not. And so I don't think I'm a good actor in real life, but a lot of people are really good at pretending, like waitresses that are like, hi, I'm Cindy, welcome to Applebee's. Can I take your order? And they're really good at looking like they're so cheerful and so happy to be your server. And they're not, like their mom just died and their kid is sick, so they're really unhappy right now, but they really did a good job of welcome to Applebee's. And I'm the kind of person that if my kid just got sick, I'd be like, hey, I had to let Applebee's fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Sorry. So keeping it real, that's another term people say is, keeping it real or putting on a front. And a lot of us are aware that people put on fronts, fronting like you're something, fronting like you're a wannabe, you're a fake, you're a poser, versus you're real and authentic. And so these questions are what are central to symbolic interactionism, is this question of how we create our own reality. In other words, the main idea here overall is that it isn't just feel like a play, but in a lot of ways we create the realities. So if we're having a class right now, if that's really what's going on, it's because you're helping create that. if you wanted to disrupt it and make it so I can't teach this class, you could. You could start playing a different part and saying different lines and not sitting there laughing at my jokes or looking like you're listening. You could start like just turning this way. I mean, another good example is like elevators. Every time everyone gets on an elevator, they get on the elevator and then they turn around and face the front. What if you got on the elevator and didn't do that? What if you got on the elevator and just kept facing the back? What would you think would happen? Other people would think you were weird, maybe, and as soon as the next floor came, they'd get off the elevator to get away from this weirdo. In other words, this is a famous example of what's called a breaching experiment. You can show that social life's a performance if you just refuse to go along with the performance and do it differently than is expected. And once you violate people's expectations of how you're supposed to play your part, then chaos happens. Social order breaks down. So if we're trying to ask what creates society, conflict theorists say it's these class domination. One class is dominating another, and that's why we have this capitalist society. This group says, no, everybody's doing their role, they're doing their function in the society, and so the system itself requires people to do what they're doing, and that's what creates the order. But this one says it's up to us as individuals whether we have order or not. If we choose not to go along with the program or act in a different way or don't go along with the expectations, we can create disorder and we can ruin society, can ruin classrooms, ruin things. And so anyway, so where does social order come from? Is it imposed on us from social structures and social systems, or do we as individuals have the agency, the freedom, the choice to make society work or not? That's a big question for sociologists. Another big difference between these perspectives is their scope. If it's a lens, just like a lens, you can say, well, how big is your aperture, or what do they call that? And are you zooming in on something, or you have a panel view of the whole thing? And conflict theory and functionalism are known as macro perspectives. And symbolic interactionism is known as a micro perspective. Macro means big, and micro means small. So if you ask a conflict theorist, how big is your lens when you're trying to study society? What are you looking at? Is it a small thing or a big thing? And a conflict theorist would say, well, society that I'm studying as a sociologist is called capitalism. And capitalism is the whole world. It's been in the whole world since about 1492. It's been growing since then. But nowadays it encompasses the whole world, and it's about 7 billion people or something like that. It's been here for 500 years. So that's a big thing that's been around a long time that you're studying if you're a conflict theorist. That's macro. And you're basically saying all of humanity is the society that I'm studying. Functionalists are a little smaller scale than that. Most functionalists, if you ask them what are they studying when they're being a sociologist, they'll say, well, I study particular national societies. Like in America, we have American sociologists, functionalists that study American society, trying to figure out how does America work? How does American government fit with American economy, fit with the American school system, the American healthcare system? How do they all work together? And most functionalists usually focus on a particular institution. So you have some functionalists that are like health sociologists that focus on health and illness and healthcare. You have some that are military sociologists that focus mainly on military. You have some that focus on law and crime and just focus on law enforcement. You have economic sociologists. But all of them are focusing on big things called social institutions. And if you were studying like the education system of America, that thing's been around for several hundred years. It encompasses many millions of people. So it's still quite big. It's smaller than studying the whole globe. For the last 500 years, you're studying America, or not even all of America, but just the American education system. But it's still pretty big. And if you're studying people at that level, then the people themselves are just like little ants. And you, the sociologist, are way up here looking at all of humanity. Look at those humans over the last 500 years. What have they been doing?
Or if you're a functionalist, you're like standing on the top of the Empire State Building, looking down at the people of New York, going, look at those ants. Some go here, some go there, some do this, some do that. Look at this ant hill I'm studying. But if you're a symbolic interactionist as a micro, so these are more like bird's eye view. Like how would a bird look at America? And this is more like the worm's eye view. If you're going to be a good symbolic interactionist, you have to see people interacting, not just see them as ants going here or going there, but down, up, and close. How do they talk to each other? How do they look at each other? How do they not talk to each other? Like silence says something. Like when people are talking and some people don't talk, that tells you something. When people look away, that tells you something. When people look at something, it tells you something. So looking at people's human interactions at that level can tell you a lot about who they are and what they're doing and why they're doing it. But if you're way up here in the airplane or the top of the skyscraper, you're not seeing how people actually interact. And if you're not seeing how they actually interact, maybe you're missing a big part of what society is all about. It isn't just, they're not just ants doing what they're told. They're people making choices every second about how to behave. And so we want to, so the symbolic interaction standpoint is much more likely to not study a whole society over 500 years or a whole social system, but just study a small group. Small groups. Like a single family. Studying a single family over 1 year could tell you a lot about that family, but it could also give you some sense of how families in general work. I did my master's thesis on, I did my senior thesis on, did my master's thesis on a rock band. So they were just 4 guys that I got to go on tour with. But studying how they interacted with each other, how they interact with their fans, how they interact with the industry, it's starting small. But by asking why people do what they do in that small group, you're having to branch out and look a little wider and see this larger context that they're in. But the point is that we're starting at the smallest scale with real people, individual people, and how they behave, rather than big systems and how they operate. And so it's, again, different perspectives on how to look at social life and what's important and what to focus on. And so we will spend a lot more time over the next few weeks getting into conflict theory. What does it mean to look at America, at the world as a capitalist system? And how does that help explain or not various things that have happened in America, or various things that are currently true about America? So we will begin looking at conflict theory on Tuesday. Any questions right now? I will put out a announcement about the Sociology Club meeting on Saturday. And meanwhile, so if you ever have any questions about anything I say, you can also email me. If engaging in class isn't your way of doing it, online is another way to do it. All right, see you around. See you Tuesday.